Good morning, you pal champions. My name's Dober Ryan, and right now we're gonna do like a video that goes over every single passive skill that you can get in Palworld on your pals. Now, a couple of things to note beforehand. Every pal can get up to 4 passive skills, and there is a chance that any of these skills will wind up on your specific pal, with the exception of a few, and we'll go over that when we get to it. But we're going to start with the worst ones, and we're going to go all the way up to the ones that have the highest effects, so to speak. With that being said, the even the ones that are bottom tier that don't have negative effects but a small positive effect are still really, really good, depending on if you can get that to roll with other ones. Now, you can, and I don't know the harsh numbers on it, but when breeding, you can transfer one pal's passive, one of the parent passives, over to over to the egg, the offspring, right? So, say you have a deer or an elk deer, or however you pronounce it, with swift, and then you have an elk deer with nimble. Uh, Male and female, you put them together, then you have a better chance. It's not always guaranteed of getting swift and nimble on the offspring, but then they can also roll 2 other stats. So with that out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go over all of these, and I'm gonna give like a brief description on if they suck. Keep in mind the first ones are going to be just bad ones to get, ones you don't want, for no reason whatsoever, right? So the very first one is going to be brittle. So brittle reduces your pal's defense by 20% flat. That's all it does. It is one of the 3 worst traits or skills you can get in the game. So again, that's 20% less defense. Obviously, that's terrible. Then we have slacker. This is one of the worst ones you can get for a pal that you want to have working on your base, right? So if you roll a pal that has ferocious, let's say it's an Anubis, right? They're typically really good at base, so you roll them with ferocious and slacker. You don't want him on base. That is a fighting pal or someone you put in the condenser, or you can sell him at a pal merchant, whatever it is. You don't want slacker. If you get it, try not to use them, try not to breed them, and if you do breed them out, which essentially means you're going to take a parent that has slacker, mix it with a parent who doesn't have a slacker, and then when you get an offspring that is the gender that you want for breeding, if they don't have slacker, you're going to quickly pull that slacker out. You're going to kick them away. You're going to get rid of them. Sorry, no room for you, bud. Next up, we have Pacifist. The way Pacifist works, minus 20% flat attack. It's that simple. These sometimes I will get like, let's say, uh, we'll use Anubis as an example again. Let's say I want an Anubis who's a fighter. If he rolls with Pacifist, I'm not going to use him as a fighter. This is going to be a pal that I keep at my base, right? So you have to keep that in mind when you get these passives. Don't look at it and go, oh, God, they suck. He rolled pacifist. Well, he may have rolled pacifist, but if maybe he rolled with work slave as well, you're going to want to, keep him around for working conditions or as a base type of character, right? So now that we're out of like the 3 worst ones, these ones are just minor downgrades. So with the first one, it's going to be bottomless stomach. So satiety drops 15% faster. Basically, what this means is they're going to be hungrier 15% more often, or something like that, right? So they're going to eat more. Typically, you do not want bottomless stomachs as workers because they will blow through your food. And right now, the best food to give your pal at the time of recording this is red berries. Just because they're super easy, super cheap. It takes care of itself. You don't have to waste ingredients. You don't have to spend time cooking. And a pal with bottomless stomach will absolutely destroy your berries. Next up, destructive. So sanity, or san, drops 15% faster. It's easier to just refer to this as like their happiness, right? So these pals are going to get depressed faster. They're going to get fractures, ulcers. They're going to get all of those ailments a lot faster and more often than other pals. You definitely don't want a destructive pal as a worker. Hell, you don't really want a destructive pal on your team. However, to my knowledge, there is no negative side effect to having like a pal with 5% SAN on your team. It appears that they slowly gain SAN over time on your team, so keep that in mind. Next up, we have Clumsy. So this is minus 10% work speed. This adds up over time. If something's going to take 10 seconds to craft, now it'll take 9 seconds. Not good. Next, you have Downtrodden. So this is minus 10% defense. Just keep that in mind. You do not want a Downtrodden as a fighting pal. Next, we have Glutton. Now, this one is a better version of Bottomless Stomach. So satiety drops 10% faster. So same thing as before, except they're only going to be hungrier 10% of the time. Next is Unstable. So same thing as Destructive, except it's 10% rather than 15%. Still just a net nerf. Don't want to run Unstable. Next, we have Coward. Minus 10% attack. Why? No reason to have this as a fighter. Just don't run with Coward. Now we're getting into the ones that these are base, what I call base tier, right? So these ones will almost always just be a net buff. Some of them are like trade-offs, so keep that in mind. So a perfect example is this first one, which is Work Slave. So this one is plus 30% work speed, minus 30% attack. So this is a perfect example of this a really good base pal. If a pal runs with Work Slave, great. Don't use them to attack or fight unless you absolutely have to. It's horrible for fighting. Keep them as a base pal, but other than that, super solid. I don't mind rolling Work Slave at all when it comes to running a base pal. Next, we have Hydromaniac. So this one is just a flat 10% increase to water attack damage. This is something that, again, and these can roll on any pal, so you could get a Blasma with Hydromaniac. Worthless. It's not worthless, because it's just not, but it's not what you're looking for on a Blasma. However, it's fine. It's just a solid buff, so to speak, but it's not going to make or break anything, right? Typically, you would want Hydromaniac as an extra passive on top of other passives that increase damage, right? Same thing goes with Hard Skin. Hard Skin is a plus 10% defense bonus. Veil of Darkness is 10% increase to dark attack damage. Same thing as Hydromaniac, except dark. Conceited is just... It's a worse Work Slave, except instead of attack, it's defense, and it's only 10% on both. So 10% increased work speed, 10% reduced defense. Fine, if you're running like a base pal, you're going to want to get Work Slave with Conceited on them. So yeah. We have Suntan Lover next, 10% decreased incoming fire damage. That's fine. Super solid if you have like an ice pal, so like for instance Frostallion, Jolthog Cyst, Vanworm Cyst, all those things. If you can get them with reduction to fire damage, solid, because they're weak to that, so they're going to take increased damage from that. Next up we have Power of Gaia, so 10% increase to earth attack damage. That simple. Pals like Anubis, earth type, they're going to do more damage with their earth attacks if you get Power of Gaia. There you go. We have Masochist. Masochist, it's, in my opinion, probably one of the worst in the game because it trades 15% attack for 15% defense. Now, in my experience, defense is not worthless by any means, but you would rather just have better attack. Masochist is something I try to, if I have a pal that has it that I want to keep or use, I try to breed them out, or I use them only for the condenser. In my opinion, it's just one of the worst. It's worthless, because again, I would rather just have the 15% boost to attack. Next up, we have Hooligan. This is one of my favorites. So 15% increased attack, but 10% reduced work speed. The great thing is It's 15% more attack, and you only lose 10% work speed. So this is in one of those situations where you can still use a pal that has Hooligan in base, because that 10% isn't that big of a deal, but they've got 15% attack, so they're going to do better off in fending off raids and things of that nature. So it's just kind of up to you. However, if you're breeding and attacking pal, Hooligan is one of the traits you want to go for sure. Next, we have Cold-Blooded. Cold-Blooded is a 10% increase to ice attack damage. Great. Awesome. Nothing wrong with it. These ones are pretty boring as far as that's concerned. Next, we have Dainty Eater. This is another great one for work pals. Satiety drops 10% slower, so this just means that they're not going to be hungry as often. That's simple. Waterproof, same thing as Suntan Lover, so except water, so 10% decrease to incoming water damage. Boom, bop, easy peasy. Next up, we have Aggressive, plus 10% attack, minus 10% defense. Again, there's nothing wrong with this one. Not the best, because you do lose out on that 10% defense, but it really is not that big of a deal, right? Next, we have Capacitor, 10% increase to lightning attack damage. This one is going to be good for like your Grizzbolts and your Orzerks, however you pronounce it. Grizzbolt, which is my personal favorite attacking Mon Pal guy. My Grizzbolt actually has Burly Body, Ferocious, Capacitor, and I believe Lucky. I can't remember if I finished breeding Lucky on him or not. But yeah, no, great. Just does electric damage. Next up, we have another one of my favorites, Sadist. Maybe it's because I'm a sadist IRL. I don't know. But plus 15% attack, minus 15% defense. Again, it's a buff and a nerf, mostly a net positive because of the attack buff. I wouldn't worry about the loss of defense, but I wouldn't get excited about getting Sadist either. There's better ones that you can get that isn't going to hurt your defense quite so much. Next, we have Nimble. Great, S tier. This is another one that you're going to be breeding onto flyers and mounts or anything like that. 10% increase to movement speed. Nothing more to say about it. It's great. Next, we have Cheery. 10% decrease to incoming dark damage. It says what it does on the box. Abnormal. 10% decrease to incoming neutral damage. Same thing. 10% increase to fire attack damage. So this is like something you're going to want on Blazamut. Just anything to increase that fire attack damage. Again, says what it does on the box. Positive Thinker is a good working pal one. Sanity drops 10% slower. Great. They're just going to be cranky less often. Heated Body, 10% decrease to incoming ice damage. Fragrant Foliage. And I see this one I swear every pal I catch or breed ends up with fragrant fucking foliage on it. It's ridiculous. Brave, 10% attack. Great. No downside. It's fine. Roll it on your pals that are going to be fighting. Insulated Body, 10% decrease to incoming lightning damage. Bada bing, bada boom. It says what it does on the box. 10% decrease to incoming dragon damage would be Dragon Killer. Which, in my opinion, Dragon Killer and Blood of the Dragon, which we'll go over in a minute, they're a little, their names should be swapped. But either way, 10% decrease to incoming dragon damage. We have Zen Mind next, 10% increase to neutral attack damage. Yeah, you're going to want to roll this on a Paldius, Lunaris, anything that's neutral, just because you're going to want mostly neutral attacks on them. We have Earthquake Resistant, 10% decrease to incoming ground damage. There you go. Again, this is something you're going to want to roll on like a fire type, just to help with that weakness. Botanical Barrier, 10% decrease to incoming grass damage. Something you're going to want on a water type pal. Blood of the Dragon, 10% increase to dragon attack damage. You're going to want this on any dragon pal. Jeez, I'm never going to get the mon references out of my head. And now we're going to move up to kind of the best of the best, right? And there's not as many of these. But we have Sirius. This is a work speed plus 20%. That's it. There's no negative to it. Now, with these tier 2 and 3 um, passives, you're not going to have issues with negative effects, right? So, Sirius, 20% increased work speed. Musclehead, this is like the one exception, kind of shitting on me for making a comment I made. But you're going to get plus 30% attack, minus 50% work speed. Again, don't put a pal that has this on out in your base. It's useless. I mean, 50% work speed reduction is crazy. If you have a pal that has 400 work speed, it's going to go down to 200. That's terrible. The 50% is a lot bigger than you think, and it will add up, and it will really slow you down. But that 30% attack is nice. We have Runner. This is the second one, the second of four, or I guess technically five, that you're going to want on your mounts. So you have 20% increased movement speed. That easy. Now, Flame, Celestial, and Spirit Emperor, along with Lord of Lightning, Divine Dragon, all of these are going to be lumped up kind of in the same category. These are basically for very specific pals, right? So Divine Dragon is going to be on the Jet Dragon. You have Lord of Lightning, which is on Ozark. And they're going to increase their specific elemental damage by 20%. So Divine Dragon is 20% increase to dragon attack damage. Lord of Lightning, increase to lightning attack damage. Lord of the Underworld, 20% increase to dark attack damage. Spirit Emperor, this is going to be on Lylene, 20% increase to grass attack damage. Celestial Emperor, this is on Paldius, 20% increase to normal attack damage. Flame Emperor, which is on Blazma, is a 20% increase to fire attack damage. These are all solid. They're going to come on their respective characters every single time you catch a wild one, and there is a chance that they will or will not be bred to their offspring. So, for instance, if you have two Ozarks breeding, and they both have Lord of the Lightning, their offspring can come out without Lord of the Lightning. So keep that in mind. It's not guaranteed, but they're all solid. Next, we have Legend. This one only applies to Jet Dragon, Paldius, Frostallion. I'm not sure if it applies to the Noct version, Necromus or whatever. I haven't caught him yet. But this is going to be on those 3 or 4 specific pals. Best one in the game. Attack 20%, defense plus 20%, movement speed plus 15%. Solid. Nothing wrong with it. Amazing trait. Next, we have Ferocious. Ferocious is a flat 20% increase to attack. You're going to want this on another attacking mon. It's best to roll it with Musclehead. So if you have a pal with Musclehead and you have a pal with Ferocious and you want to breed them and try and get Ferocious and Musclehead together. You have Mine Foreman, 25% increase to player mining efficiency. So this is a player buff and not a pal buff. And I was confused about this at first. To my knowledge, this will not affect your pals at base. It does need more testing, and there may be someone out there who already knows. I haven't come across that information. But yeah, so this means if you're out mining or away from base and this pal's in your party, you're going to have an increase to your mining efficiency, essentially. Next is Diet Lover. Decrease in hunger is less likely by 15%. So this is the same thing as Satiated. He goes down by 10% such. So they're just going to be hungry 15% less often. I'm not sure why it's worded like that, but it is what it is. You have Artisan. This one's amazing. 50% increase to work speed. No downside. There's nothing wrong with Artisan. Get Artisan on any pal that is going to be working. Logging Foreman is the same as Mine Foreman, except it increases your logging efficiency. Next, we have Vanguard, which is a 10% increase to player attack. Useless, I'm going to be honest. I so rarely, and I know this is just my playstyle. I know there's a lot of people out there that like using the guns because they do a lot of damage. But for me, I've beaten the game letting my pals do fucking everything. I'll be in towers, I'll throw my pal out, and I stand behind a barrier and watch TikTok. Or one of the giant poles or whatever you would call them. Because I breed my pals to do maximum damage. I dump souls into them, and at this point in time, fucking dude, making ammo for guns is so expensive. Not to mention the catching glitch on my main world with the Lift Monk statue, which if you don't know, reportedly If you're leveling up your Lift Monk statue, your catch rate is being reduced. Because of that, and because I play on base settings, I'm using like fucking 40 legendary spheres to catch one thing, right? So I don't have the luxury of spending resources on ammo. So to me, Vanguard's absolutely useless. I just kind of hate rolling it, and it seems so common. But that it is what it is. Next up, we have Swift, 30% increase to movement speed. This is the number one passive that you want to get on your PAL. That is a mount, right? So you're going to want to, you can, now keep in mind these do stack, so you can roll Swift with Runner and Nimble, and that is going to give them a 50 or 60% increase to movement speed. They stack, don't worry. So yeah, but they are PAL specific, so you can't have 3 PALs in your party with Swift and then you get a 90% increase to movement speed. They are specific to a PAL, but they will stack with other passives on that PAL. Workaholic, sanity drops 15% slower. This one's great. There's so many bugs that make your pals depressed and stuff right now, so anything that can reduce the sanity drop is solid. Stronghold strategist, fine. Again, defense just feels dookie right now because of the immunity frames with dodge rolls. You're not going to be getting hit that much. If you are and you're dying too quick, it's probably because you're in a situation like you're fighting, I don't know, the Jet Dragon who's level 50, you're fighting him at level 30, right? So typically you're just going to want to just roll away from everything. But I understand that's not always possible because of the issues with the game right now, but yeah. Next we have Lucky. So this one, you can only get this off of Lucky Pals. They will always roll with it, and it can be bred onto Offspring. So keep that in mind. But it gives you a 15% increase to work speed and 15% increase to attack. It's amazing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just something that you can work or you can transfer onto any Offspring and you can be happy about it, essentially. Next, we have Motivational Leader. 25% increase to player work speed if they're in your party. This one's great. I have no issue with this. I think it's fantastic. I try to run at least someone with Motivational Leader in my party at all times, but if you're not crafting, it's not necessary. It's that simple. And then you have Burly Body, which is a 20% increase to defense. Boom. Now, I will say, this one I'm okay with because 20% seems like a much more noticeable jump than 10% or 5%. With that being said, I don't get particularly excited for it, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's going to do it. There's a lot of passives, as you can see. And I will link the wiki, or this wiki page, inside of the description so you can look at it more in detail. The main reason for the video is to just give you a vocalization of the passives if you just want to listen to it while you play, or if you want to, keep this tabbed while you're inside of Palworld and listening for specific passives. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me how much you hate me. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you so much. Mwah.